In this video, I present a patch that allows any user, guitarist or not, to enter guitar tablature and then play it. This patch is based on standard guitar tuning, but it's very easy to choose any other tuning. To support the video, here's an example of a 16-bar tablature that will be entered into the patch. We now listen to the resulting output. The patch is primarily based on the Father and Son module from Computer Scare. It's a matrix with 10 inputs and 10 outputs that allows you to sequence up to 16 different scenes. A tablature is transcribed simply by reproducing the graph of each of its bars using the Father and Son buttons. Note that when multiple buttons in a given column are activated, the output of that column displays the voltage resulting from the sum of the voltages patched to the activated inputs. This property will be used in cases where a string must not sound open. Now let's move on to the detailed assembly of the patch. After loading Father and Son, we load a Bog Audio Reftone module and to obtain the notes of a guitar, we duplicate it so that we have 6 copies. Each Reftone is patched to an input of Father and Son. The pitch and octave of each module are set to achieve the standard tuning of E2, A2, D3, G3, B3, and E4. If you wish to obtain a non-standard tuning, these notes can be easily modified later. Each of Father and Son's outputs is patched to an oscillator's volts per octave input. For this example, I chose the OSC4 oscillators from the Doc B collection. For better readability, each input is labeled using a blank module with labels generated by Stormelder's glue module. The outputs of each VCO are now patched to inputs of the Grande Collection VCA3 modules. At each of their CV inputs, we patch the VCO outputs, making sure to set all VCA gain control knobs to 1. The 6 outputs of the VCA modules are now patched to the 6 inputs of a mix module from the VCV Fundamental Collection. We'll see later how to modulate the envelope of each VCO using an ADSR module, as well as how to introduce a delay between each one so that the notes of each sequence can be played successively. But first, let's complete the connections for the Father and Son module. Indeed, for now, it can only play the notes corresponding to the open strings of the guitar. For non-guitarists, I remind you that, in tablature, these open strings are marked with a 0. However, when a note needs to be played higher than the open string, the guitarist's finger must rest the string in question on a fret more or less distant from the nut. This fret is marked on the tablature by a number indicating its position. These numbers obviously vary depending on the tablature in question. In our example, we might see the numbers 1, 2, or 3. In practice, this amounts to raising the open string note by a semitone, 2 semitones, or 3 semitones. This pitch adjustment is performed by count modulus constant module, which outputs voltages corresponding to various intervals. Constant outputs 1, 2, and 3 are patched to 3 father and son inputs. This allows, by activating the button in the relevant column, to add the necessary voltage to raise the pitch of the open string as desired. The father and son input labels are updated accordingly. To control father and son sequencing, we now need to install a clock device. The impromptu CLKD module is loaded and then supplemented with a trigger 3 Malawian Kwacha's module from the AS collection, which features 2 buttons. These will serve as the reset and run buttons. To prevent the clock from starting at the second step of the sequence after a reset, we patch its CLK1, run, and reset outputs to the corresponding inputs of a seek adapter module from the RCM collection. Thus, the seek adapter's clock and reset outputs become the outputs to which all modules requiring a clock or reset signal will be patched. The CLKD module is configured from its context menu by unchecking the output high on reset when not running option. We'll now look at the modules that need to be patched to each VCO in order to shape their envelope and, moreover, introduce a delay so that the strings resonate successively. We'll load a signal delay module from the AS collection, as well as an ADSR module from BOG Audio. Since signal delay is a dual delay module, it can be used to process sounds coming from 2 successive VCOs. The clock output 1 of CLKD is patched to the first input of the signal delay module. The output of the latter is patched to the gate input of the ADSR module. Thus, the clock signal will trigger the envelope applied to the first VCO with a delay time. We will need to set its value in milliseconds using the time ms knob of signal delay. The output of the ADSR module is then patched to the input A input of a VCA3 module. To modulate the envelope of the second VCO, the ADSR module is duplicated and its output is patched to input B of the VCA3 module. To ensure that the notes emitted by each VCO are time-shifted, this second ADSR will be triggered not by the clock but by a trigger from the signal delay module. To manage the time shift between the first and second VCOs, the output of the first signal delay is patched to the input of the second signal delay located at the bottom of the module. We now duplicate the signal delay and ADSR modules to cascade this pattern across the 4 remaining VCOs. Each ADSR module will therefore be triggered by the output of the previous signal delay module. Similarly, each signal delay will in turn be triggered by a trigger delivered by the output of the previous signal delay. Ultimately, each clock signal received at the ADSR input of the first VCO will be passed on to the following ADSR modules, but with a delay that we will have adjusted using the knobs on the signal delay modules. This setting must be adjusted to allow all the VCOs to alternately output their notes between 2 successive clock pulses. To complete this audio chain, the 6 mixed notes are taken from the output of the mix module and then sent to an audio module configured to suit our driver and our audio devices. The advancement of each step of father and son must be clock controlled. Therefore, the clock output of seek adapter is patched to the clock input of father and son. Similarly, the reset output of seek adapter is patched to the reset input of father and son. The patch is now complete. But before detailing the implementation procedure, it's necessary to introduce a device that will allow you to manually modify the active step of father and son. As we'll see, this device will be used when storing successive bars of our tablature in father and son. To do this, a VCV push module is loaded into the patch and its trig output is simply connected to the clock input of father and son. Each press of push will thus advance the active step number. Let's now see how to store a tablature in the patch. The first thing to do is to set the number of bars in the tablature using the father and son button. In our example, we'll store 16 bars. Then, by pressing one of the buttons labeled Editing, we scroll to the number of the step to be edited in the editing window. For the first bar, the step to be edited will obviously be number 1. Similarly, in the window labeled Active, we scroll to the number of the active step by successively pressing push until we reach step number 1. We are now ready to enter the data for the first bar. To do this, simply activate the father and son buttons to exactly reproduce the diagram shown on our tablature. We then look at the numbers appearing, for each string, on the lines of the tablature. When a number other than 0 appears, the button corresponding to its value must be activated in the column for the relevant string. This operation is then repeated as many times as there are measures to be entered. For each bar entered, ensure that the active step number and the step number to be edited are equal to the bar number to be edited. Once the input is complete, we proceed to set the clock tempo. In our example, this is 50 BPM with a ratio of 1/2, or 25 BPM. The delay settings for the signal delay modules will be based on this tempo. By dividing the duration of a bar by the number of notes in the bar, we obtain the value of each note. In our example, a tempo of 25 BPM implies a bar duration of 2.4 seconds. Each note must therefore have a duration of 400 milliseconds. This value, which corresponds to the time difference between two successive notes, is entered into each signal delay module using the time knob. The final step is now to adjust the ADSR modules to our liking. In the example, the attack is set to 0, the decay is set to 1 second, the sustain is increased to 50%, and finally the release is set to 0.5 seconds. After adjusting the brightness of the VCOs using the wave knobs, we can now test everything to make sure everything is working. This concludes this tutorial. Thank you for your patience. See you soon for more explorations of the VCV Rack planet.